signs you're complaining too much and what it's doing to you. We all do it. That passing comment about how slow the line is, that sigh when someone doesn't text back fast enough, that almost unconscious groan about the weather, the traffic, the people, the politics, the noise. Complaining has become so woven into our daily lives that we often don't even notice it when it's happening. But what if we're doing it too much? What if, without realizing it, complaining has become our way of relating to the world, our default emotional posture? And more importantly, what is it doing to us? Let's begin here. Complaining is a signal. It's not inherently bad. At its best, it's a way to express discomfort, to challenge injustice, to connect with others through shared frustration. But like any signal, when it's overused, it stops being a message and becomes a background noise, one we carry everywhere. We assume we're just venting, but what we're really doing is rehearsing dissatisfaction over and over until it becomes who we are, until we start identifying more with what's wrong than with what's possible. And here's where things get philosophical. The act of complaining is not just about the external world, it's a reflection of our internal landscape. When we complain, we're not just describing the world, we're revealing how we perceive it. In other words, how we talk about life is how we experience life. If we train our minds to constantly look for what's wrong, we'll miss everything that's right. That's not optimism, it's cognitive reality. Neuroscience backs this up. The more we focus on negative experiences, the more our brains become wired to expect them. Complaining, then, isn't just a reaction, it's a habit of attention. But why do we do it? Why do we keep pointing out the flaws, the annoyances, the imperfections of everything and everyone, even when it makes us feel worse? Part of the answer lies in the illusion of control. When life feels uncertain or overwhelming, complaining gives us a false sense of authority. It makes us feel like we're doing something, even if that something is just pointing out what's broken. It's easier to critique than to create, easier to blame than to build. Complaining requires no vulnerability, no risk, no engagement with solutions. It's the safe way out, but it leads nowhere.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
There's also a deeper, more troubling reason we complain. It connects us. Or at least it seems to. Socially, complaining is a shortcut to belonging. We bond over shared grievances. We feel validated when someone agrees that the boss is annoying, or the coffee is terrible, or the world is falling apart. But this kind of connection is shallow. It's based on mutual discontent, not mutual growth. And over time, it creates relationships that are more about what we dislike than what we love. Ask yourself, how many of your conversations are built on shared passions and how many are built on shared complaints? Now imagine for a moment what it would feel like to go a full day without complaining. No criticism of yourself, no sighs about the weather, no mental grumbling about the stranger walking too slow. Could you do it? Most people can't. Not because they're bad, but because they're unconscious. They've never audited their thoughts. But that's what this is about. Not judgment, but awareness. Because once we see our patterns, we can question them. And once we question them, we can change them. But here's the real cost of chronic complaining. It distorts reality. It makes life seem more hostile than it is. It keeps us in a loop of low-level misery. And perhaps most importantly, it turns us into passive observers instead of empowered participants. When we complain, we focus on what we can't do. When we take responsibility, we focus on what we can. And that shift is everything. So let me ask you something deeper. What if every complaint is a missed opportunity to grow? What if behind every moment we criticize is a moment we could have created something better within ourselves or in the world? That's not just philosophy, that's a wake-up call. Because if we want our lives to change, our language has to change first. And that begins with recognizing the signs. Are you always focused on what others are doing wrong? Are your conversations filled more with sarcasm than sincerity? Do you find fault more easily than you find beauty? These are not just habits, they're mirrors. They show us how we've trained our minds to think. And they offer us a choice to keep rehearsing powerlessness or to start practicing presence. The hidden addiction, why complaining feels good and destroys you slowly. There's a strange, almost seductive pleasure in complaining. It gives us a quick hit of satisfaction, a small rush of being right, of being seen, even if only by ourselves. It's like scratching an itch, momentarily relieving, but if we keep doing it, we start to bleed. And yet we return to it, again and again. Why? Because complaining at its core is addictive. Not in the way substances are addictive, but in the way habits form when they meet unmet needs. It gives us a false sense of relief from a deeper discomfort we haven't named or faced. Let's break this down. Every time we complain, we reinforce a narrative: I am the victim. Something out there is wrong. I am powerless unless the world changes. On the surface, that might seem like a justified stance. After all, life is full of challenges, pain, and injustice. But when we overuse this narrative, we unconsciously build our identity around it. We become the person who is always struggling, always slighted, always overwhelmed. And here's the paradox: even though that identity brings suffering, it also brings familiarity, and familiarity, as we've said before, is comforting, even when it hurts. This is where the addiction lies. Complaining gives us a momentary sense of control in a world that often feels chaotic. It allows us to place blame, to offload responsibility, to feel momentarily superior. But that control is an illusion. It doesn't change anything. In fact, it quietly reinforces our helplessness. We feel better for a second, and then worse for hours. And yet we return to it, again and again. Like a gambler pulling the lever on a machine that never pays out. Now here's where it gets even deeper. Complaining isn't just a reaction, it's a rehearsal for more complaining. Like any habit, it strengthens the neural pathways in our brain. The more we complain, the more our brain looks for things to complain about. It's not just a thought, it's a lens. We begin to filter life through dissatisfaction. We train our perception to zoom in on flaws, to highlight what's missing, to expect disappointment. Over time, this becomes our reality, not because the world got worse, but because our attention did. But ask yourself this: what part of you is being fed when you complain? Is it your ego, your need for control, your desire to be seen as right or righteous? And more importantly, what part of you is being starved? Your joy, your creativity, your problem-solving mind, your sense of wonder? Complaining often feels like expression, but it's really suppression. It keeps us stuck in mental loops, circling the same frustrations without ever landing on clarity or action. There's a deeper philosophical truth here. Life is not what happens to us, it's what we do with what happens. When we complain, we resist reality. We say, this should not be. But resistance, when it becomes chronic, only creates suffering. Acceptance is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the ability to say, this is what is. Now, what will I choose to do with it? That question is the beginning of agency. It's the moment we stop reacting and start responding. Think about the people you admire most. The ones who radiate calm, or power, or purpose. Are they chronic complainers? Probably not. They've likely learned through pain and practice that complaining may be easy, but it doesn't lead to growth. They've chosen a different path, one of observation instead of judgment, one of action instead of avoidance, one of presence instead of projection. So the question becomes, what are you really craving when you complain? Is it validation? Is it connection? Is it a release from pressure? And is there a better way to get that need met? Because here's the truth, the need is valid, but the method may be self-destructive. Complaining is like drinking salt water. When you're thirsty, it feels like relief, but it only makes you more parched. Real nourishment comes from awareness, from action, from shifting the narrative. If you find yourself complaining often, don't shame yourself. That only adds another layer of noise. Instead, get curious. Pause. Ask what's really going on beneath this. And then ask, what can I choose instead? It might be gratitude. It might be silence. It might be a bold, uncomfortable action. But whatever it is, it will move you forward. And that's how you break the addiction. The mirror principle, what complaining reveals about who we really are. What if I told you that every complaint you voice is less about the world and more about you? That the things you consistently criticize outside are often reflections of unresolved truths inside. This is the heart of what I call the mirror principle. It's not a metaphor, it's a psychological and philosophical reality. When we complain, we're not just expressing opinions about the external world. We're revealing our inner frameworks, our values, our wounds, and our unmet expectations. Every complaint is a clue. The question is, are we paying attention? Let's take an example. You complain that people are unreliable, that no one shows up for you, that everyone seems selfish. At first glance, it's about them. But if you look deeper, what you might actually be expressing is your own unmet need for loyalty or your own fear of abandonment. You might be projecting your inner insecurity onto the outer world. The complaint, then, is not a judgment on reality, it's a cry from within. A message from a part of yourself that hasn't been heard. The world becomes your mirror, showing you the parts of yourself you've neglected, denied, or misunderstood. This is not easy to accept. It's much more comforting to believe that our complaints are justified and that the world should change to accommodate our preferences. But the mirror principle doesn't care about comfort, it's about truth. And the truth is, if we want to understand who we really are, we have to listen to what bothers us. Not in order to build a case against the world, but to decode the message about ourselves. This isn't about blame. It's about responsibility. There's a massive difference. Blame says, it's your fault I feel this way. Responsibility says, my reaction is mine to explore. One traps you in helplessness. The other opens the door to transformation. When you take responsibility for your complaints, you gain the power to learn from them. You begin to ask deeper questions like, why does this particular thing trigger me? What fear is hiding underneath this frustration? What story am I telling myself that makes this situation intolerable? And sometimes those answers are hard to face. Maybe you complain that people don't respect your time, but the truth is, you don't respect your own time, and you let others overstep your boundaries. Maybe you complain that no one listens to you, but deep down, you don't fully listen to yourself. Maybe you complain that life is unfair, but you haven't yet confronted your own avoidance of responsibility, your own fear of failing on your own terms. But don't run from that discomfort. Lean into it. Because this is where growth begins. Every moment of irritation, every complaint we whisper or shout, is an invitation. It's the universe holding up a mirror and saying, look, there's something here, something you haven't healed, something you haven't understood. And the bravest thing you can do is look, not with judgment, but with compassion, with curiosity, with a willingness to rewrite the story. This is what separates the philosopher from the passive thinker. The philosopher doesn't just analyze the world, they analyze themselves through the world. They understand that the world we see is filtered through the mind we have. Change the mind, and the world changes too. That's not just poetic, it's psychological. Cognitive science confirms what ancient wisdom has long suggested: perception is constructed. And our most frequent complaints reveal where our construction is weakest, most wounded, or least conscious. So next time you complain, pause. Don't suppress it. Don't shame it. Just listen. Ask yourself, what is this really about? What does this say about the story I'm living? And do I want to keep living it? Because here's the beautiful, terrifying truth: you don't have to. You're not bound by your complaints. You can use them as a compass, pointing not to what's wrong with the world, but to what's waiting to be healed within you. That's the essence of the mirror principle. It's not just about self-awareness. It's about sovereignty. It's about taking back the power we've scattered through blame and bringing it home where it belongs. Because only when we see ourselves clearly can we begin to shape the world more wisely. From noise to power, how to transform complaints into life-changing action. If we've made it this far together, something in you is shifting. You're starting to see that complaining isn't just a habit, it's a signal, a mirror, and in many ways a call. A call to rise above the noise and step into something deeper: ownership. Because the real magic, the true power, lies not in silencing our complaints but in transforming them. Turning them from unconscious reactions into conscious responses, and from draining conversations into revolutionary action. The moment we realize every complaint is an untapped source of power, our entire relationship with life changes. Let's talk about transmutation. It's a term alchemists use to describe turning base metals into gold. But in a philosophical sense, transmutation is the art of turning emotional weight into wisdom, frustration into fuel, victimhood into vision. Every time you complain, you're holding raw material, energy, focus, passion. But if you do nothing with it, it turns toxic. It festers. It becomes bitterness, cynicism, helplessness. But if you engage it, if you ask, what can I do with this? You begin the process of becoming something greater. Here's how it works. First, notice the complaint. Name it. Don't judge it. Say, I'm frustrated that no one listens to me. There's power in naming. Then ask, what's the deeper truth underneath this? Maybe it's that you haven't been expressing yourself clearly, or that you've been surrounding yourself with people who don't value your voice, or that you've been afraid to speak your truth fully. Whatever it is, now you're in the realm of insight, not noise. Now here comes the hard part, the part most people never do. Take action, real, tangible, uncomfortable action, and start a conversation you've been avoiding. Set a boundary, change your environment, build something better, advocate, invent, create. The moment you act, you reclaim your power. You stop being a passive observer of your life and become its active architect. Let's make it real. Say you constantly complain about your job, the people, the system, the grind. But what have you actually done to change it? Applied elsewhere? Learned new skills? Started a side project? Spoken honestly with your boss? If not, then your complaint is just noise. But the moment you take a single step, send a resume, enroll in a course, write the first line of a resignation letter, you've turned that noise into momentum. That's transmutation. Or say you complain about the state of the world, politics, the environment, injustice. That's valid. But what are you building instead of what you're tearing down? Are you voting, volunteering, creating art that opens minds, supporting those who are doing the work? Or are you just contributing to the echo chamber of outrage without ever lifting your hand to shape a better reality? Because complaining without action is not awareness, it's surrender dressed as concern. But let's go deeper, because sometimes the action we need to take isn't external at all. It's internal. Maybe the complaint isn't about the world, it's about your own fear, your own avoidance, your own need to be right instead of free. In that case, the most radical action might be forgiveness, or stillness, or letting go of a belief that no longer serves you. In that case, action looks like healing. The question we must ask ourselves again and again is, am I using my voice to reinforce my disempowerment or to reclaim my agency? Because we have a choice. Every complaint is a fork in the road. One path leads to more noise. The other leads to clarity, courage, and creation. And this is where complaining becomes not just a personal issue, but a spiritual one. Because when you stop complaining, not out of suppression, but out of transformation, you become a different kind of presence in the world. You become someone who doesn't just point out the cracks, but someone who builds bridges. You become the kind of person others want to follow, not because you're loud, but because you're lit from within. You've done the inner work, and now your life speaks louder than your words ever could. So I leave you with this. What if your greatest complaint is actually the seed of your greatest contribution? What if the thing that bothers you most is also the thing you were born to help heal? Will you let it remain an echo, or will you turn it into a voice that moves mountains? The power is yours. It always has been. The only question is, what will you do with it?